thought they was just leaving. Can't be nobody else, I'ma be myself. So they gon' have to watch me treat myself. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? You make it look good. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. Watch this.
Okay, first off, we're not even dating. Second of all, I don't even like him. Third, he's probably running out of fuel soon, so God knows if he'll ever make it back here.
I'm back, bitches!
Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. I sure hope the folks over at Team 4-Star don't mind me stealing clips from the show Dragon Ball Z Abridged. I just think their voice acting is so funny. And the editing from Kaiser Neko, oh my god. A lot of folks don't appreciate that in a filmed comedy of any sort, the editing is as much a part of the comedy as the acting, be it voice or otherwise. So if you're not watching Dragon Ball Z Abridged and you have any love of anime at all, whether it be from Astro Boy back in the day or whatever the kids watch now, give it a gander. It's fantastic. How are you doing? Oh, my word. You made it. It's Saturday. Well done. Another week on the books. Mark's BBR, hello to you. The anti-corporatist. Am on the phone. 1 second. Well, tell your wife we said hello. Wicked Foxy Dragon, if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up. Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. Folks, today we're going to look at some viewer suggestions. Got some already ready to go, and I think we saw this one before, and also had some I wanted to check out. What about that? I'm looking forward to it. Here is the link for the suggestions sheet for Salty Saturday. I'm going to pin that right now. It's going to be frying all week, says Wicked Foxy Dragon. Yeah, I'm not looking. 117 on Tuesday. I don't know how you have adapted to survive in Nevada. I congratulate you. You're insane, though. Both of these things are true. Oh, my God. I was in Vegas just one time that I recall. And I have an infinite respect for those who can handle the heat. Good Lord. Speaking of, that's what our first segment's about. Let's crack into it. This suggestion, I believe, was from the anti-corporatist. Let me pop back there. Yeah. Not gonna watch the whole thing, but because it's a half hour long. But we're gonna watch one segment in it, which I thought was pretty darn interesting, and it will probably help if I do an intro. Hey, there we go. Be right back. Got a suggestion from the anti-corporatist. Thank you very much, by the way. Per Wicked Foxy Dragon mentioning the upcoming heat, we are about to have a really hot week. And that's following an insanely hot week that broke all kinds of records. Well, here's a news station in Florida discussing exactly how hot it was in relation to the ocean, which they are near. Let's have a gander.
The world's oceans are alarmingly hot right now. In fact, far above records for this date. And the math tells us that what we're seeing should be statistically impossible in a quote-unquote normal climate. But our climate is no longer normal, as climate heating has loaded the dice for more extremes. So it's time to bring in today's guests to discuss. Catherine Nimchik is my longtime climate producer and my great friend. She is now a climate media specialist whose job it is in this particular show. She's got to keep me honest, and she's got to keep the conversation focused on what you, the viewers, want to hear. Hey, Catherine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. And also, marine scientist Dr. Ellen Prager. I have known Ellen for a while now as well, and she is so good.
Now, look, I've got to just straight up object. Anti-corporatist on the Nevada heat. It's a dry heat, Jake. Totally different than Midwest humidity. Now, I'll give you that under 100 degrees, sure. When you're at the point where you're frying an egg on the sidewalk, hard pass. That said, I will grant it hits different.
At making the science digestible so that every...
Oh my God, they all have such crisp connections. The old local newsman in me is wondering, did they shell out for sending their guests independent broadcasting units? This is probably the biggest station in Florida, if that's the case.
Everyone can understand it. Hey, Ellen.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me.
I'm glad you can be here. Now, I just want to note one thing before we start our discussion. You can submit your questions on our Facebook page, either the WFLA Facebook page or my Jeff Baradelli Facebook page.
Foxy, that might be something we should start doing, like a poll on the Facebook page. I should probably get off my duff and do it. But let me know what you think of that. Folks in the comments, should we start doing a poll every week in the Facebook page where we just ask questions or field questions of some sort? I don't know. Let me know what you think. That sounds like fun.
And then Catherine's going to be looking through those questions, and she's going to ask myself and Ellen the questions that you have, and we're going to do our best to answer. All right, so I want to begin just by giving kind of a description of what is going on. So take a look at that map you see right there in the middle of the screen. You see a lot of red and very little blue. The global oceans are not just at record levels. They are way, way, way above record levels. Part of that is due to a developing El Nino in the Eastern Pacific Ocean. And then there's a whole bunch of weather reasons why it's very warm in the Eastern Atlantic and in the main development region, the tropics, which may pose some problems for hurricane season. Some of that has to do with a lack of Saharan dust, and we're going to be talking more about that as well. I want to show you this graphic right here to give you an idea of how far away from normal and how far away from records we are. All those lines you see on there, they're basically from 1980 until now. And we see the red, that is this year, and we are 1 degree Fahrenheit, not above normal, but above records in the North Atlantic Ocean. And by the way, I can say almost the same for the globe right now, where the statistical probabilities of having what we have right now on the entire globe of being this warm right now are something like 1 in several 100,000, if not more rare than even that.
My question is, does anybody still deny this? Truly? And if so, what freaking brand does their denial take? Are they saying that's not a big deal? We'll find out in a second what the effects of that are. Pin in that if you know somebody whose opinion is that that's not a big deal. That's a big damn deal. Are they saying that, oh, it isn't man-made, this climate change? It was going to happen anyway. Nonsense. But at least then they are acknowledging that it's here and it's a problem. Let me say this. If you come across anybody that says climate change is not man-made, then redirect the conversation, because it doesn't matter what caused it, really. What matters is what can we do to stop it, and does it need to be stopped? I suppose reverse that. Does it need to be stopped, and if so, what can we do to stop it? Yes, it needs to be stopped. You can say, all right, it's not man-made. Let's just say that. Can we do things to stop it? 100% we can. We know if we reduce our carbon emissions, we will have less climate change. Doesn't matter if you think something else pushed us here, and it would be fine for us to have cars otherwise. Well, whatever that something else is still there, and until you can find it, we got to reduce what we do. Just redirect the conversation to, all right, well, regardless then, if it's somehow so abhorrent to you to take on personal responsibility for what we have done, fine. Let's take on then personal responsibility for what we will do today and going forward. What can we do to literally save the world? Let's find out how bad this 1 degrees above record is going to be.
All right, so with that said, I want to bring Ellen into the conversation. Ellen, I'm sure you are watching this as a marine scientist. So as someone who's been doing this for a very, very long time, have you ever seen anything like this, and does it in any way alarm you?
So, no, I haven't seen anything like this. And I could say personally, I was recently in the Galapagos, and the water was way warmer than it should be, even at the beginning of an El Nino. So that's right on the equator in the sort of Eastern Pacific. So really warm. Does it shock me? No. Does it alarm me? Yes. Given El Nino in the background of climate change, honestly, I'm not sure this is even unexpected. We knew this was going to start happening, and the question really was when.
Well, here it is. And I kind of try to equate it with this. Let's say you're trying to dunk a ball. It's almost like climate change put a big bench under you. Now it's much easier for you to dunk the ball. It's much easier for us to reach these extremes. So, Ellen, Catherine has a question about the Galapagos. Because whenever I talk to Catherine, she's a lot less interested in the extreme weather and a lot more concerned about life and animals. She has a heart. I don't have one. So, Catherine, go ahead. Ask Ellen what you were going to ask.
Well, I want to know how ocean life is going to be affected by these rapid temperature changes.
So that's a great question. El Ninos have a very big impact in the Galapagos Islands, and especially strong El Ninos, because what happens is the food web, which is really fueled by upwelling of cold, nutrient-rich water, gets shut down. You get a warm cap of water, shuts down upwelling, shuts down productivity, and a lot of the animals can't find the food they need. It's actually a pretty difficult time in the Galapagos. The marine iguanas die, sea lions, pups can't make it. The carrying capacity of the animals goes down. So it is a huge issue. The past couple of years, climate change has been sort of masked there by La Nina. We've had an unusually long La Nina. Everything has been flourishing in the Galapagos, but now that's probably going to change.
Ellen, I'm looking
What
at
about
these. Wait, Catherine, I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys can see the graphic I have up, but you can see the Galapagos. I mean, it is just boiling there. We're talking several degrees Fahrenheit, if not more above normal. Ellen, I understand that in the 2 last big El Ninos, that those islands lost something like 50 to 75% of the Galapagos penguins, right? The penguins died because they couldn't find food.
Right. The penguin population was drastically reduced. In the past couple of years, the Galapagos Park Service has done a great job bringing them back, but this is really worrisome. And I will tell you, in the 82, 83 El Nino, that was another very strong one, the Galapagos lost 95% of the corals. So
The thing that bums me out about climate change is that it is going to affect all of us. We're already at the point where there's no preventing that. And the really sad thing is it's going to just plow through the stuff that lefties care about first. Lefties care about what happens to human beings. Definitely. Definitely. Of course. But generally speaking, those principles that make folks on the left give a damn about other people that aren't them, they tend to extend to other creatures. It's where you get your tree-hugging hippie stereotype from. But it comes from a good place. I mean, it comes from having universal ethics, extending your principles outward, and thinking about things like, I don't want to cause suffering in another creature, especially if I don't gain anything from it. Not really. Certainly, I'm not willing to exterminate an entire species of penguins so that gas isn't 5 cents more expensive per, I don't know, barrel or whatever nonsense. Really sad thing is, we are going to get action on this, and it is only going to be after irreparable harm is done. And first, folks on the left will have to watch so much suffering, because it won't be until it affects enough humans that wealthy conservatives just decide to stop obstructing as hard their efforts to say stop obstructing efforts to save the environment. They're not even going to help. They're just going to stop actively hurting as badly as they have. But that will only be after so much destruction has happened. And here we are seeing the beginnings of it. First, it's creatures that can't write down a message to say, hey, we're suffering. Help us. Stop hurting us at the very least. But the people will come shortly after. The people most likely that rely on that ecosystem to survive.
Ninos have a history of a big impact in the Galapagos.
Right, and you pile the already warm natural warming from El Nino. It's a natural cycle, everybody. This is not climate change, but it is on top of the climate change baseline, which has warmed the oceans by around 1.5 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And so now you're reaching extremes that this biological diversity may not be able to adapt to. Am I right about that?
Just to be clear, the problems we're seeing are from climate change. They are from climate change exacerbating existing problems. El Nino and La Nina. I seem to remember in the 90s these being a new thing, but maybe I'm wrong. Regardless, these were existing weather events that are being, as he's saying, exacerbated by climate change. So it is climate change. It's just, as with most science-related discussions, complicated, nuanced. You have to have the patience to understand the details. But don't let somebody get away with saying this isn't climate change. It's just the weather.
Exactly. Again, sort of the baseline, what we think of what it should be, and then you get El Nino turning on, is nowhere near what it was. You have to consider climate change as the starting point now, that warm ocean.
All right.
Remember, one of the things
Thank
that
you.
people don't talk about a lot is that something like 90% or more of the excess heat from the atmosphere is being absorbed into the ocean. That's where that ocean heat is coming from.
All right, Catherine, I know you have more questions. I know you read my article. You sent me like, there was so many questions you sent me in that email. I didn't even have time to read it. So go ahead. What's on your mind?
Well, a lot of people are talking about tipping points in relation to this. I was wondering if you could kind of explain what those are and if this is one.
Okay, so I'll take it first, Ellen, and then if you want to jump in, you can jump in. So basically, the premise is when we see temperatures that are as high as you see in that graphic right now, above records, not above normal, but above records, it's just most people that are in climate think, did we break something? I mean, I think that is a natural question. Is something broken? I can't say for sure that we didn't break something, but usually tipping points don't happen over the course of a few weeks, right? Or even a couple to a few months. When we talk about tipping points, it's we basically reach a point in some part of the climate system. Let's take the Amazon rainforest just as an easy explanation. If you burn too many trees, the Amazon rainforest just starts to go away. Why is that? Because trees produce their own moisture through evapotranspiration. The reason why the Amazon's so wet is because trees actually produce the rain. You get rid of the trees, then you have no more rain, and then the forest transitions from the rainforest to a savanna. That is a tipping point, right? It doesn't happen like that. It takes years and years for it to happen. But once you cross a certain tipping point, then at that point, there's no going back. It's irreversible.
Right.
So just an answer to the question, I don't think we've passed a tipping point. There are a lot of very good meteorological and oceanic reasons why this is just, I think, a lot of coincidental factors piling on top of each other to kind of yield this, and a lot of it's El Nino. But Ellen, let me bring you in. What do you think?
So I think part of it depends on how you define tipping points. If you're talking about, are we going to see more consequences from high ocean heat, moisture in the atmosphere, a warmer atmosphere, higher sea level, are we going to continue to see that? Yes, that's in our future. Is it irreversible? Hopefully not. I'm gonna take the point. No, it's not. We can still do a lot of things to stop it.
Right.
So the tipping point of these things are going to continue to happen. They're probably going to get worse. Yes, but I think the point here is it irreversible? And I think we should say no, because there are things we can do.
So,
I mean, the thing that bums me out about climate change coverage in general, and this is no shade on that presentation they just gave. The thing that bums me out is that I think the vast majority of people who need to be swayed about this hear that it's still reversible and think, we have more time to do nothing. It's so maddening. They hear reversible and they think, okay, I'll check in next year. What are they waiting to hear? Nope, it's broke forever now. Now we have a problem that cannot be fixed. Time to act. The people who need to be swayed on this are our politicians. At the end of the day. The good news about this is the plan for dealing with it is the same for the plan for dealing with most other problems in the United States. It is why, and frankly, in the world, it begins in the United States, not because the United States has been the savior of the planet. No, because we've been the major problem on planet Earth for quite a while. So solving the Earth's problems is probably going to begin in this wretched hive of scum and villainy, which is home. We need to get a blue House, a blue Senate, and a blue White House. We need to get Democrats in all seats of power. And then once they are there, we need to make it crystal clear that this must be dealt with immediately. Priority number one has to be climate change. I hesitate. Has to be climate change, assuming that all the state's electors by that point, the false electors in various states by that point, are in the criminal justice system being dealt with. Yes, climate change. That's got to be the number one thing. Why? Because so many other problems are going to result from not dealing with this. If you want to talk about just the ocean, okay, there's the economy in terms of how it will affect fishing, how it will affect real estate with coastal properties. If you want to talk about immigration, there will literally be climate change refugees like crazy. We will have folks abandoning places like Guatemala. We'll have, Ecuador. We'll have folks, actually both work there. We're going to have folks from areas that we're not used to seeing them come flooding out of. If you want to talk about national security, climate change has a massive effect on that. It has an effect on troop readiness. It has an effect on military plans. It has an effect on just about every aspect of life. So it is going to be a top priority. There is not a special plan for dealing with it, and that is, believe it or not, a good thing. It's the same plan for a lot of things. It means it is incredibly important that we are successful. Oh boy, 2024 is going to be important. But it does mean that we can focus our efforts. So it's Salty Saturday. We're just trying to be salty. But it's good to note that that is the answer coming up. And I would encourage you to point out, be annoying, and point out all the things lefties are correct about. This being one of them. We're in the summer now. That means we're going to see effects of climate change as people are more prepared to recognize them. Things like flooding, horrible storms, and droughts and fires. And it's a good time to really grind home the fact that this is our fault, and it's also our responsibility to deal with it. Prep people to vote blue in 2024. Anti-corporatists, please. The only way the rich and powerful alternate elector schmucks are ever going to see the inside of a cell is on orange is the new black. Oh, I disagree. I think we're going to get them. Red is the new orange, says Wicked Foxy Dragon. The anti-corporatists, yeah, we actually probably do need to build a border wall. I think I would rather we have a plan for helping folks. Domenico, Salty Saturday is back in the habit. Yes, sir. Thermonuclear fusion is a good goal for the energy crisis and will provide clean energy. One area research and developing as of now is green hydrogen. Yeah, I've read a little about that. That is fascinating. I'm looking forward to that. I remember hydrogen cells about a decade ago being of large interest. I think that kind of petered out, like hydrogen battery cells. But still, I think the recent fusion developments are promising. But really, I mean, there is so much mundane stuff on the table that we've just chosen not to take advantage of. Go out into a neighborhood and look at all the empty roofs and understand that on every hot day where the sun is beating down on your house, number one, that is free energy that's just not being taken on every one of those roofs. Not saying make it mandatory, but make it free. If somebody wants to put a solar panel on the roof, absolutely. That is literally free energy being left. What do we use instead of the let's be as narrow as possible. Let's say for just 4 hours, you would have got enough energy to power significant things in the home. Well, instead, we burn fossil fuels, and we pay billionaires even more money. Okay, it also makes the house hotter because you don't have the solar panel on top, reflecting a lot of that heat, absorbing some of it. So then you pay even more to cool the house. We leave this on the table because we have allowed literally big oil to bribe our politicians. We should have green energy initiatives where the government is literally just giving people the technology they need as they request it. That easy. You want a solar panel on your house? Boom, free, done. Government installs it. Maybe if you accept that, we work it out so that you get less of a tax break if you were going to get a tax break, yada, 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 whatever. The details aren't as important as the fact that it's a clear benefit for the government, for the people involved, all across the board. But yes, there is certainly going to be technological answers to this down the line. I'm just saying that to make it a hell of a lot better right now, we don't even require them. To have massive progress overnight, we just need to decide collectively that we're going to make it a priority. Maddening. Wireless Mike, at What You Can Do, I just sent you a link to an article on a new breakthrough. Ooh, my man. Ba, 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 ba. Let's have a look. Oh, well, let's look at this. You know I want to see it. Daily Hampshire Gazette. This is interesting. All right, yeah, let's have a look. Here we go. I'm about to be told I have 3 articles remaining, aren't I? All right. Electricity, Electricity out of thin air. Researchers stumble on a way to tap electrical charge of water vapor. Interesting. I do worry about already some of the possible atmospheric consequences, but let's have a look. Give this a fair shot. Amherst. What if all you needed to generate electricity was thin film material, microscopic fibers, and air? Researchers at the University of Massachusetts have proved it can be done, and now they're showing that many different kinds of materials can be used for the AirGen device. The air contains an enormous amount of electricity, said Jun Yao, an assistant professor of electrical and computer engineering who directed the research. Humidity is the source of this power. For example, as Yao explained in an article on the UMass website, each water droplet in a cloud contains a charge, and when conditions are right, the cloud can produce a lightning bolt. I'm sorry. I just recognized that little... When you're tired and you're writing an article and you can't get an interview with the folks, sometimes what you do is quote other articles where somebody already did the work and interviewed them. Nothing wrong with it, as long as you cite that, and that's what they did. I just find it funny. I've been there. What we've done is to create a human-built small-scale cloud that produces electricity for us predictably and continuously so that we can harvest it, Yao said. That's fascinating. Yao and co-author Derek Lovely showed back in 2020 that electricity could be continuously harvested from air using a specialized material made of protein nanowires grown from the bacterium Geobacter sulfuriducans. Sounds like a Street Fighter move. What we realized after making the Geobacter discovery, Yao said in the UMass article, is that the ability to generate electricity from the air, what we then called the airgen effect, turns out to be generic. Literally, any kind of material can harvest electricity from air as long as it has a certain property. That's just interesting. What it needs are holes smaller than 100 nanometers or less than 1,000th of the width of a human hair. I can't use mine then, dang it. These tiny holes are wide enough to allow water molecules to pass through, but not without bumping into the sides and so generating a charge. Man. All right, let me talk about that aha moment. That's always the fun part. Yao noticed that the researchers' aha moment was the result of an accident. Graduate student Xiaomeng Liu was working on an electric sensor using nanowires. One time he forgot to plug it in and realized it was still producing an electrical signal. Liu is still working on the AirGen project, at least until he finishes his time at UMass in the next year. The basic device, the size of a fingernail and 1/10 the thickness of a human hair, consists of a thin film full of tiny holes exposed to the air on top, a layer of nanowires or fibers underneath, and a bottom layer that's sealed. That's interesting. I'm just looking at the profit end there. That is interesting. I would suspect strongly that this type of thing is going to become a lot more common. I do still maintain that we don't require a technological solution to this, but I mean, I love sci-fi dearly, and I love all technological progress. We don't, though, require a technological solution in order to make an impact, but that doesn't mean we can't benefit from them. Oh my God, yes. Literally having just a generator, like literally something that generates electricity out of air, that's cool as hell. Great find, thank you. Dino, we have the technology and the money, we just don't have the will to do anything. Yeah, that's crazy. Ryan Barry says that the anti-corporatist, that is a super cool one. It amazes me how well they can insulate the sand. Oh, what's he referring to? Hot sand batteries, what the anti-corporatist was talking about, where they use resistive heating to heat the sand and then use the sand to boil a fluid and spin a turbine, is a promising storage technology. Yeah, that is really fascinating. And it's a kind of a low-tech way to do it, but genius. Finger Manant says, anyone remember that company called Touch of Modern? In their commercial, they said they had a device that had a mini cloud. Interesting. I could never figure out if it was real. Yeah, I don't know, but that is fascinating. Wireless mic, we don't require them, but we're getting them every day. Yes, both are. I mean, it's good. It's good. It's good that we don't require them, but it's also good that we're getting them. I mean, if you can win a war with bows and arrows, but somebody hands you an AK, take the AK. I mean, wish you weren't in a war. Would certainly rather this Earth be in peacetime in regards to the climate, but take what you can get for sure. Just don't be discouraged if this turns out to be, slow to generate the kind of power we need. There are. I'm just saying, don't put all your hopes. Don't feel that all your hopes need to be in some scientist saving us. But the cavalry of eggheads is certainly on the way. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Ooh, I don't know if this one's a little older. Wicked Foxy, if we have time, we'll do left of the box. I do really want to just enjoy something that I've seen recently. Yeah, let's do an intro. Why not? There we go. Well, one of the things that y'all have accomplished by putting pressure on the Department of Justice and your representatives to also put pressure on the Department of Justice is that they are actually investigating things. Oh, shoot. I've got the wrong link. Yeah. They're actually investigating things. And that has resulted in easily my favorite bit of family drama. Jared Kushner, who was Donald Trump's pampered son-in-law, has testified, or has apparently been speaking to the lawmen, or going after Trump. This is fascinating because, as this MSNBC video will demonstrate, Trump was knee-deep in, or rather Kushner was knee-deep in Trump's coup. Let's have a look at exactly what he saw and what he could be talking about.
We've got some breaking news, as is often the case. I'm trying to read it off my phone. We are learning from New York Times reporters that Jared Kushner was already questioned by special counsel Jack Smith. Tim Hafey, you had a chance to talk to Jared Kushner. I remember his testimony as a tad smug. But take us through what he provided to you and what opportunities, if any, Jack Smith might have had to push further, and what they would have wanted in terms of a criminal context from Jared Kushner.
Yeah, so we did spend about 8 hours with Mr. Kushner. He did submit to a voluntary interview by the Select Committee. They're really two separate things that about which he has information, Nicole. He's part of the president's family, was involved in discussions soon after the election in which the president was told directly that he lost. He was present for this meeting where the pollster of the data guy from the campaign actually presented the numbers and went through the sort of explanation of the decreased margins in the suburban areas. And he was already starting to move to Florida. He and his wife were looking at property and schools for their kids in November. So we developed a lot of information from him about direct communications with the president about the fact of the election loss. But the other thing that's really crucial about Kushner is that he was directly involved in the campaign fundraising that then became the Stop the Steal fundraising.
So that's two really important things. Number one, Kushner clearly knew they lost. The questions are going to be pretty straightforward. Did you know you lost? Why did you know you lost? Did you communicate that to Donald Trump? Did Donald Trump acknowledge at any point the truth of it? These are going to be crucial questions to have answered because they're going to establish the criminal mindset of Donald Trump at this time. Also worthy of note is that the Stop the Steal, as they called it, fundraising appears to have been wire fraud. I mean, what were they raising money for? There's no way all of that money went to contesting these things in court. So if $1 of it was spent to buy a cappuccino for somebody unrelated to this, it can be, if the Justice Department is so inclined, it can be pursued as wire fraud. Really devastating for Donald Trump that Kushner's talking. What is worthy of note? That we're learning about this now, but the reality is it happened a while back. So if you'll recall, also a while back, Ivanka Trump announced, I'm not using daddy's attorney. We're getting our own attorney. Another theme we've been talking about on this kind of show is that Donald Trump uses the mob tactic of providing an attorney for people he does not want to testify against him. What the mob attorney does is prevents you, if you've accepted this deal with the devil, they prevent you from doing anything that would damage the mob boss. So this is incredibly telling, and oh boy, it's not good news for Trump.
Was directly, personally briefed almost daily about the cash machine, the veritable hand over fist money-making machine that was Stop the Steal. As we've discussed, the Trump campaign pivoted to a fundraising operation focused on the fact that the false narrative of election fraud, Jared Kushner was right in the center of strategy, of mining that false narrative for repeated cash contributions of up to $250 million after the election. So to the extent Jack Smith is looking into campaign fundraising based on these false statements of election fraud, Jared Kushner would have information about that as well.
Well, Tim, Jared Kushner, I think, also sat atop the very sketchy / corrupt pardon process. And if you thought you were going to be there a second term, would you really pardon your dad? I mean, it seems that of all the people who knew, the gig was up, the lights were going out, Jared Kushner's at the top of the list.
Yeah, exactly right. He was right in the center of a lot of conversations and was one of the voices we developed that was more realistic about the election. Your point about politics there and pardons is important too, Nicole. One of the things that's getting lost here, and Secretary Benson's comments bring it to mind, is all of this effort that the president and his conspirators were focused upon was on Republicans. Secretary of State Benson, very same position as Secretary of State Raffensperger, she doesn't get a call from Donald Trump. He's not calling Democrats. If he was truly concerned about election fraud and thought that there was actual evidence of election fraud, he'd be calling everyone. But instead, he's calling Republicans. In Arizona, we're about to talk about Arizona, he doesn't call the Secretary of State in Arizona. She's a Democrat. He calls Rusty Bowers, the Republican leader of the legislature. So this is a nakedly partisan effort to try to get Republicans to violate their oath to stay in power. The difference in terms of how he treats or reaches out to Democratic office holders, lack of outreach, Republican office holders, even outside of the Secretary of State's chain, repeated outreach to them, shows this sort of nakedly political desire. And to Neil's point, suggests he knew that it was cheating. He could only get Republicans to help him.
Yeah. This has been examined and rehashed and re-examined so many times. But when we say it was obvious what Trump was up to, it's stuff like this. When we say that you don't really need much more evidence than what was publicly available, it's stuff like this. Like the fact that you can notice the only people that Trump called and put the pressure on to try to flip the election were people that were Republicans. I mean, the language he used, in addition, the threat to Raffensperger. It is a joke. It's not kind of a joke. It is a sad, unfunny, kind of scary joke that this guy is still walking around free. Thing number one we're going to have to deal with in 2025 after a successful 2024, which we're going to have to work damn hard to achieve. Thing number one will be climate change. Thing number two, even if we have successfully put in prison all of or enough of, let's say, the folks that were responsible for this, we need to reform the criminal justice system in the United States. we can't, I mean, ground up. It is obviously flawed. And yes, that will include getting rid of things like private prisons, getting rid of cash incentives for police officers to harass people, getting rid of a lot of the ground level stuff. But boy, it's also going to have to come up with a better plan for dealing with corruption at the top. We had this come to a head with Trump. And I think the only reason that it's really being pursued is because it was too obvious, the corruption. But part of the reason that I think multiple generations of top law enforcement in the United States have chosen not to go after corrupt presidents, because Trump is not the first, is that there wasn't a plan for how to do it. There just wasn't a plan for it. And the precedent we've set right now is not one that we should maintain. This is a failure. It cannot take 2-3 years to deal with a coup. Especially, my God, one that was this obvious. What if Trump had only worked with middlemen and he didn't do any of the phone calls himself? What if Trump had been successful? What if the court cases involved with this were just a little bit more vague? What if it was like Florida in 2000? Yeah. Florida in 2000 across a couple of states. How about that? We cannot have it be such an optional thing to fulfill the will of the people in the United States. We cannot just hope that the people that betray this country do it incompetently every time. Because we'll have people do it competently next. And we are clearly unprepared to deal with that. So yes, an overhaul of our system of justice and putting forth a clear plan. I want to see our legislators put forward obvious, simple safety measures, definite reactions. When I say obvious and simple, I mean if X happens, then Y happens. There's no negotiation. So, if say you have another situation where the president makes contact with any fill in the blank for appropriate title, let's say Secretary of State, or has somebody make contact with a Secretary of State regarding an election within, let's say, X many weeks of the election, it's an automatic prison sentence. It's that simple. Everyone involved goes to prison. That's the kind of rules we're going to have to put in place, where there is simply no negotiation. If it has the appearance of corruption, it is assumed to be corrupt because you should have known better. And don't worry about an innocent president accidentally stumbling into this. That is why there is a lawyer whose job it is to sit in the White House and tell the president if they're about to do something illegal. We already took care of that. So let's take the kid gloves off.
Let me read some more from this piece that Tim and I are talking about. The New York Times has just dropped a piece of reporting that says this: prosecutors ask witnesses whether Trump acknowledged he lost the 2020 race. It starts this way. Federal prosecutors investigating former President Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election have questioned multiple witnesses in recent weeks, including Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, about whether Trump had privately acknowledged in the days after the 2020 election that he had lost. The reporting is based on 4 people briefed on the matter. The line of questioning, reports the New York Times, suggests prosecutors are trying to establish whether Trump was acting with corrupt intent as he sought to remain in power, essentially that his efforts were knowingly based on a lie, evidence that could substantially bolster any case they might decide to bring against him. Kushner testified before a grand jury at the federal courthouse in Washington last month, where he said to maintain that it was his impression that Trump truly believed the election was stolen, according to a person briefed on the matter. Andrew Weissman, saying that Trump really thought it was stolen isn't the same as Trump having information that anything had been stolen. I mean, it feels like Jared Kushner may be watching his inheritance with one eye and his legal hide with the other. I mean,
oh, that's devastatingly well put. Just to be clear, not thinking it was stolen can also mean thinking that there's proof that it was stolen. And that, in my opinion, is all that matters. As in thinking that proof is out there, they just haven't found it. But I don't believe he thought that. I don't believe he can get away with saying he thought that. And more importantly, whether he thought that or not, by January 6th, he hadn't been able to produce it. There is a clear deadline there. If you can't produce it by then, too bad. Too bad. And the reason for that is so that we actually have a timely transfer of power, like when the people said it was going to happen. Otherwise, let's just say randomly an immoral dictator was in charge. They could just pretend like every election was suspicious if they didn't win and delay the results indefinitely. And oh, look at that. Years later, they say, yeah, we're just going to call the whole thing off. I've done most of this term anyway. That's what Trump is trying to turn America into, for the record.
You have so much evidence that people went right to Trump and told him that he lost. Nobody went in and told him the opposite, except the pillow person, the pardoned Mike Flynn. I mean, what questions do you have about this new reporting?
So a couple things. One, regardless of whatever someone's opinion is, so Jared Kushner's opinion about what he thinks the president truly believed or didn't is not admissible. What is going to be admissible is what facts are there. And this really goes to Tim's point that he's sort of said over and over again. There are no facts. And just remember, to this day, there are no facts. In other words, even if there were no facts then, even now, there's still no facts. So at the end of the day, criminal cases where facts and law matter. And so the other point is that putting in to the grand jury people like Jared Kushner, everyone who was around the president to learn what they would say is a critical part of what Jack Smith's job is at this point. Whether their information is going to be good or bad, they need to know what these potential witnesses would say, whether they're
Yeah, important to note on the no facts thing that that really is not a strength for Trump. Oh, there was no evidence one way or the other, and so we acted differently than everybody else in the history of the country ever has. It just, the logic of it doesn't hold up, and in court it won't. And this is great news if you care about justice, because I was most concerned that we would not get to this point. I was most concerned that what would happen would be in late spring, right before some other major event was going to take the news cycle. We would have Merrick Garland come out and say, well, after looking at the facts, we've decided that we cannot get a conviction in court, but we have gotten over 1,000 convictions of January 6 rioters and blah, 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 and justice has been served in America, blah, 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 blah. That's what I was concerned about. I'm not concerned about getting a conviction in court. Yeah, we might have problems in the documents case because Eileen Cannon is a corrupt judge. Yeah, we might have to just settle for a civil, I don't even know if you call that a conviction, a civil ruling against in the sexual assault that Trump committed in New York. But the man tried a coup, and he did it indelicately. So the mountain of evidence against him, combined with the fact that other people who were involved in a coup, the fact that they don't want to go to prison for the rest of their lives, and especially the fact that Trump is a blowhard moron, means that I'm quite confident we're going to get that conviction. Good. Ooh, Mars Falcon. How long has it been since Bannon was convicted, and how long until he figures out whether he will ever have to serve his little sentence? I don't know. I know he got pardoned for the federal charges, but now he's looking at state charges. I think you're right. I think he was also convicted on those. Has that happened already? That's going to be a while. Even if he gets the conviction, the sentencing is, I don't think, going to be the very next week, like it would be for non-rich people. Christine Carroll. Avoiding meat and dairy foods has been called the single biggest way an individual can reduce their environmental impact. That's true. That's true. But your environmental impact is a tiny, eensy-weensy little fraction of the overall environmental impact. And I don't just mean you personally, I mean we the people. What we are doing in terms of our shopping habits, etc., is a tiny fraction. It's not to say we shouldn't do it. If you can reduce the meat and dairy that you're consuming, yeah, that'll help, and it's appreciated. But in terms of the actions we can take overall that will help the most, it will be to simply change the way our government functions. Because our government is keeping on life support an industry that should have been left in the 20th century. Honestly, we should all be powering our vehicles for a handful of quarters worth of solar charging, or rather battery charging off a battery that was powered by solar panels and windmills and geothermal and yada yada yada. We'll get there. And if you're looking to do something tomorrow, yeah, that's a great thing you can do. And by the way, if you're looking to get an electric vehicle, there are tax credits available. Let me know in the comments. Wicked Foxy Dragon, if you're there, flag any comments you see that are asking or draw my attention to any comments you see that are requesting it, and I'll send you the tax break sheets. All right, I do. There's one other thing y'all accomplished that I want to be. I want to be sassy about. It's also Sassy Saturday to some degree. Yeah, let's do a proper thing here. We've been discussing how one of the big advantages we're going to have going into 2024 is that the GOP is just nakedly corrupt now. They will ask for money from donors at all levels, grassroots and otherwise, to finance corruption, to spend on themselves, to spend on their own endeavors, which are only tangentially related to Republican politics. That means that in this election cycle, money's going to be harder to come by for Republicans. They are not used to this. I'll tell you, Democrats are very familiar with tightening the old belt and getting by with what they can. Republicans do not know how to run a campaign like that. They cannot run a campaign if they're not dumping money into TV commercials produced by people that know what they're doing. So, it brings me great pleasure to bring you the first of what I assume is going to be a lot of news about Republican donors backing off on the donations because they see their money is being wasted by terrible candidates.
Number of Republican candidates who are not under criminal indictment gathered in Iowa today. A half dozen were at the far-right family leadership summit in Des Moines to be interviewed on stage by a disgraced former cable news host. It is an important event in the state with the first nominating contest of the GOP.
Oh, Chris Hayes. Woof. Brutal. Well done. This certainly belongs on Salty Saturday. Well done, Chris Hayes.
Primaries. It's a particularly crucial moment for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who faces a widening gap with frontrunner Donald Trump. A loss of support within the Murdoch media empire, which could be crucial, and growing concerns among big donors.
There is no one who will be able to convince me that Tim Scott is not a gopher. Right? That's clearly a gigantic gopher who is put on the clothes of a man and is running for political office for reasons I can't fathom. But be on the lookout for donations from big, I don't know, what do gophers enjoy? That was as far as I took this gag.
Who are reportedly starting to look elsewhere. DeSantis is now begging those donors to stay put.
Okay. I went too hard on Tim Scott. I didn't realize we were going to have the actual personification of meth here. Look at that face. Whoa, that's a rough mug to be in politics with. Good God. All right, let's go back to serious stuff.
In a confidential memo first obtained by NBC News, the campaign says not to worry about its frequent missteps and sagging poll numbers. Now, why would donors ever worry about that? Brendan Buck served as the senior advisor to House Speakers John Boehner and Paul Ryan. He also worked for Ryan as the vice presidential nominee in 2012, and he joins me now. Brendan, I sort of think of you as a creature of the part of the GOP that would have both the sort of staff level and the donor level been looking for an alternative to Trump and maybe look favorably on DeSantis coming out of that Florida election. What do you think the issue is here? Maybe everyone's just jumping the gun too early, or what's your assessment of where things stand?
We may be jumping the gun a little too early, but I think there's two problems. One is of strategy, and I think kind of getting to the point you were making. Ron DeSantis seems to believe that there's a lane there for him among Trump voters. I think what Ron DeSantis needs to appreciate is all of the people who are not voting for Donald Trump are looking for somebody else. They're ready to turn the page. And yet he's running a very Trump-like campaign. He wants to appeal to Trump voters. And I think you have to look at people like me who are ready to turn the page, who are rooting for someone to be someone unlike Donald Trump.
I appreciate Skeletor's input. The sad thing about this is, as uncharismatic as Ron DeSantis is, I think he is exactly correct in his calculation here. He's hoping to do all the evil and ugly stuff he needs to up front get the nomination, and then, as soon as he has the nomination, utterly change tacks and just focus on being middle of the road. I promise you, if we live in a dark future where he does actually get the nomination, that is what will happen. He'll pretend like he was never the guy he said he was just a week past, and pretend like he's centrist. And that'll just take the form of wishy-washy language around the genocide that he's trying to encourage. And, making hollow promises about how he won't go on attacking yada, yada, yada. The issue is he just doesn't have the charisma. He is abhorrent to everyone he talks to. Like, nobody can stand him, basically. And he's also been too loud about who he is. In 2016, Trump was possible because we were still, in the United States, largely, as a populace, people who did not follow this stuff at all. We are still that to a degree, but we follow it a little bit now. People will, even if they don't know what DeSantis is all about now, they will hear about what he's done in Florida. It's just the reporting has evolved. It's gotten better. He's not going to be treated like he's just some normal guy. And he's been trying to get people killed. He's been trying to, the don't say gay stuff is, there's going to be chapters written about this in a way that, like, Jim Crow laws are written about now. And you could argue it's not as bad. It's a matter of debate, certainly, but, like, I would argue that is more a case of modern technology making it harder for the Klan to operate openly than it is the sentiment of the people. I mean, I cannot believe the amount of evil that we're having to split the hairs of in the U.S. My point being, they're going to know what he did. And a lot of his campaign is based off what a tyrant he was in Florida. A new list just came out. I think it was a CNBC poll that showed the 10 worst states to live in. Fact. Why not? Let's have a look. And worst states to live in and work in. Let's pull it up. Why not? All right. Check this out for a moment. 10 worst states to live and work in. Okay, so Florida is on the list. There's DeSantis' mug right there. Arkansas, Tennessee, Indiana, Missouri. A tie, Alabama and South Carolina. Jesus. Louisiana, Oklahoma. And number 1 is Texas. And just to be clear what we're talking about, each year as part of our overall assessment of state business climates, CNBC's America's Top 10 States for Business study considers how welcoming each state is to workers and their families. Life, health, and inclusion is one of the study's 10 categories of competitiveness. And this year, with the nationwide worker shortage so severe, the category is taking on an increased importance in our methodology. Of the 10 worst states to live in, according to CNBC, 11 of them were Republican. When he makes the case that he's going to make America like Florida, that's not a very strong case. And stuff like that is going to come up pretty easily and pretty often.
So I don't quite understand where he thinks this big pool of votes is going to come from. There's a big pool of votes who say they don't want to vote for Donald Trump. We've seen that. And I really think it's its own fault that there are 13 candidates now. He waited so long and he was so unimpressive when he first came out that he had all of these people rush in. But I think that gets to the second point. One is, I'm just not so sure he's very good at this. I think there is a lack of charm that exists. And we've heard this a lot. And I was around him a bit in the House of Representatives. Charmless is putting it nicely with this person. And it shows up when he's meeting with donors. It shows up when he's out on the campaign trail. I mean, at some point, you have to make people feel something. And for whatever you think about Donald Trump, he makes you feel something. But Ron DeSantis is a bit dull. And so it makes people very easy. It's not very hard for people to look at him and say, I'm not sure this is it. And they start looking at others. And that's what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah, it's reading from the NBC News reporting across the DeSantis political universe, there's a heightened awareness of the importance of the early states, the reality he will burn out without strong performances there. From my understanding, if we don't see a bump in the polls, we're basically going to shut down the idea of a national operation, a DeSantis-aligned operative said. I've, of course, seen this before, although, again, this is so early, and I've also seen a million ups and downs, so I'm not writing any.
Ooh, mercy. I do hope they get more into the donors, though, because that is the funniest part of this story. Donors, if they don't mention it, after meeting DeSantis, have decided not donating in DeSantis. No, that's not a good investment. For clarity, for a little insight here. Oftentimes, donors will donate to both parties. They'll donate to both candidates running against each other because they don't give a damn about the ideology. They just want the person who gets elected to owe them. They want to be able to say, hey, you each got $50,000 from me. You don't do what I ask you to. Maybe next time you don't get the $50,000, but the person running against you still does. Maybe they get $100,000. That's how these cats operate. So, when a donor meets Ron DeSantis and then, in their polite language, says they're not going to invest in him, that's really telling you something about what they think of that particular investment, and therefore what they think of that particular candidate.
Obituaries here. But on your first point, this does strike me as the biggest thing, right? It's going to be Trump and someone else. Like, in the end, Trump's not going to go away. So it's going to be Trump and someone who is not Donald Trump at some point in this primary, or Trump's going to walk with it if it's split. And he really doesn't seem to want. He hasn't figured out how to occupy that without being the anti-Trump, which I understand if you're running a Republican primary is difficult, but you can be the alternative, and that has not been the foot forward that they have put rhetorically.
So he puts out this 4-page memo, and there are 2 sentences about how he might take on Donald Trump. I mean, that's your biggest problem. Like, they're name-checking Doug Burgum in this memo, and they're talking about Tim Scott and punching down without a whole lot of focus on the person who is swamping them in the polling. So at some point, you have to realize your path is not being like Donald Trump. Those people are voting for him. You need to figure out how to take this person on. And there are a few things in there, that they're talking about doing, and that's fine. But it seems like a complete lack of awareness of what the real dynamic is here. And people are.
I got to turn that on you. They misread this. He knows. People are sick of Republicans. They're sick of Ron DeSantis understands that you're not going to. If you get the old Republican voting base back and things go back to the way they were, well, then they're back to the way they were, and suddenly you're running against a moderate incumbent president. Are you going to win? No. So Chris Christie gets out there, he does his thing, he somehow becomes a nominee. Is he going to win? No. He's running against an experienced politician who is the incumbent during, so far, relatively stable times. Not going to win. So DeSantis' plan here is hinging on Trump going down in flames and then turning around and saying, I will be the candidate that pardons Donald Trump. That's his plan. To think, I mean, he is a very long game sociopathic player. Let's watch him do that stupid, awkward laugh real quick.
We're going to start walking a complete lack of awareness of what the real dynamic is here. And people are going to start.
Oh, wait, come on.
There are a few things in there.
There it is. Jesus Christ. He's got to play the long game because look at who he is. The man's got no charisma to rely on. So all he has is strategy. I think this guy has misunderstood what we're dealing with in DeSantis. I also don't think his plan will work because he's surrounded by people who tell him he's great, and the reality is he's not great.
Ron DeSantis was people hoping that he's the best person, that they've been told that he's the best alternative, and they think that this is, look, I will take Ron DeSantis 100 times out of 100 over Donald Trump. I think there are a lot of people like that, but I think instead of Donald Trump, if he had made this a one-on-one race from the very beginning, you know, his memo talks about how they want to move on from questions about Donald Trump and contrast with Joe Biden. Well, that's nice, but that's not actually how you're going to win this race. You have to take on the person who's beating you. Right. That's not the race you're running. You have to win the other one first. And they're all doing that. Don't get me wrong. He's not the only one doing that. You know, there's an opportunity there. I mean, Chris Christie gets on TV every time he talks about this. I mean,
again, he's talking about moving on from Trump because he's looking way, way ahead. I think he's just telegraphing what his campaign is going to be. It's just we can expect that campaign to start looking like that more end of this year, beginning of next year. More maybe spring of next year. I'm talking after it's been made clear that Donald Trump committed a coup. I mean, in the courts. We're going to be into these court cases. Now, I will add this. There is a small chance, I don't think it's very likely, but there is a small chance that there is going to be a massive sea change. And people are going to go back to not wanting to be openly in support of a traitor. Openly MAGA, and a lot of the filth is going to want to still be able to let minorities know that they hate them. And that'll be a good DeSantis lane to fill. But I mean, truly, honestly, if you put DeSantis up against Christie, or maybe even Nikki Haley, anybody who's like smart and exists in the real world to some degree, he's just gonna get slaughtered. Because all he can do is go when he's being yelled at on stage. He's a weak man.
Getting attention is probably the hardest thing for a lot of these people. So I don't think Chris Christie is very viable in terms of his unfavorables, but there is an audience. There is a conversation that is going to be had at some point between somebody and Donald Trump. And if Ron DeSantis wants to be the alternative, he needs to welcome that conversation and start it pretty soon.
Yeah, and again, I would not have anyone. I would not hire myself out to give advice on Republican primary politics. I don't necessarily have any keen comparative advantage there. But it does strike me that when you look at the polling, right, like Trump is at 50%, he's at 55%, like you got to think about how do we build out the 45.
Oh,
I mean, he's at 53 July 12th, right? So that's 47 that are not there. Like that's if you're picking the fruit off the tree, that's the low-hanging fruit. How do I get that first 47? When I get that, then I can worry about how do I eat into this guy's support. But if you build up your strength, that's the thing that's going to bring people over. I think ultimately you got to think about that first. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, there's still a lot of opportunities for him. There's going to be a debate. Donald Trump's not going to be there, and maybe he'll have a great performance and show that he is the alternative. He is the person. He has a lot of money. There are a lot of people who are rooting for him. So I mean, I don't think we can write him off quite yet. But absolutely, he needs to consolidate that. Again, I think it's his fault that there's a lot of people looking around right now. But he still has time to clean that up, or else you're going to start hearing talk about Glenn Youngkin and Brian Kemp getting in because they're.
Yeah, he's going to do terrible in the debate. But I do think fundamentally, and we kind of veered off topic there, I was really hoping Hayes was going to mention funding a bit more. But regardless, I think they kind of misread what DeSantis is trying to do. I don't think it'll work, hence I don't know how relevant it all is, other than as a spectator. This guy, his angle is to pursue Trump's base and to trust that the rest of Republican voters are more or less just looking for an excuse to go on supporting the extremist Republicans while pretending like they're normal. I would say that it's not going to work because Trump's crowd is not going to, by the time DeSantis is out there saying, I'll pardon Trump, a lot of them will have committed to fictitious narratives about DeSantis. So they'll find their conspiracy theory that is a good justification for why they hate him that they can memorize instead of learning anything about policy, which is boring and tedious. And they'll be committed to that. And they won't be able to say, well, suddenly I support the person that I believe secretly assassinated JFK or whatever insane thing. Also, we are in an era now where it's harder to get away with doing monstrous things and then pretending like you're not a monster. Trump did monstrous things, but he never pretended like he was anything but an absolute villain. He ran on the villainy ticket, so you got to pick a side now. You're the good guys or you're the bad guys. MAGA's made it clear they are happy to be the bad guys. DeSantis has made it clear he's happy to be the bad guys. But he's going to try to get people that are uncomfortable being outwardly villainous to vote for him. And I just don't think it's going to work. On top of that, he has the charisma of an old shoe. So no one's going to be saying, did you hear that funny DeSantis quip? No. Good. I'm glad that the Republican field appears to be disastrous. I cannot wait for the various trials, and I want to really go back to where we started. I can't stress enough that these clowns are going to be trying to do their normal show on a severely reduced budget, and they don't have the chops for it. Oh, God. Oh, y'all are lively. Mark's BBR. I may watch a GOP debate just to have a drinking game for each time DeSantis says woke. The anti-corporatists, should we start calling them W-bombs? Because he sure drops them like they're F-bombs and he has Tourette's. You know what? We should watch that debate. I'll get a bottle of something potent. The worst piss I can find. And yes, we should absolutely watch those debates. Shade Dragon. Well, DeSantis is basically the guy upping the voltage on the torture machine in The Princess Bride and asking, how do you feel now? I don't think being a baddie bothers him. That's true. Finger Matant. Striking. Yeah. No, striking's a good thing. Speaking of, the recent strike by the Writers Guild. Is that it? The SAG-AFTRA. whatever, the people who make our entertainment. I believe it is the writers. It's going well. Good for them. Oh boy, did I get this right? All right, there is just one more thing I want to do with y'all that I think you might like. Let me jump in, yeah. I don't know when I'm gonna put out the VOD for this, but it's just something I wanted to talk about. There we go. One thing that I think is important for us to start doing is to start coaching centrists. The stereotype from, left over from the days of the hippies is that leftists are not meant to be taken seriously. If you're on the far left, as soon as people know that about you, they're like, okay, whatever, hippie. And then they ignore you, and that's seen as like the mature thing to do. Like if you're a worldly person, you're too smart to listen to what these damn kids have to say. Well, it turns out the opposite is true. Turns out hippies basically had it right, even if they were insufferable about how they communicated that. I personally believe the clean for Gene people had it best, but the reality is we need to coach centrists into the new reality, because right now there's a lot of folks on school boards who hear insane QAnon parents, people who have fallen down in wacky rabbit holes, and they take them seriously. And they react as though that's a huge chunk of their community, as though they're going to get in trouble if they don't absolutely bow and scrape to what these psychopaths have to do. And the problem is, it's a problem that causes itself. Rather, the problem is it's a situation that perpetuates itself. If one school board bows and scrapes to what a wacky QAnon conspiracy theory believing psycho has to say, suddenly that's the standard. Suddenly that's every parent's right to be absolutely uninformed and to ruin a whole school's education over it. So we need to train centrists to understand what reality is. That means explaining to them that these psychos are not to be taken seriously. We are in need of a cultural shift where we start treating QAnon crazies the way we used to treat hippies, which is to say, okay, you're off in your own world and I'm not listening to you. Here's the majority report talking about it.
Glass-Steagall, even for someone as extreme as Tim, it was jarring how quickly and explicitly he started attacking you in that way. It's worth repeating that story because it shows their level of bad faith and bigotry. Yeah, I thought, I was like, do I want to repeat this because it's Streisand affecting it? But at the same time, it didn't get a lot of legs. Like, I think because it was so obviously stupid on its face, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, they've demeaned the word when they use it. Nobody takes them seriously when they say it. It's just
for the record, they're referring to the fact that Tim Pool, after getting just trounced by Emma Vigeland, and his feelings hurt when she didn't want to join him for sushi with the boys. Really weird. After the interview, he called her a pedo. It pulled out that old chestnut. But Matt Binder here is bringing up a good point, which is that word doesn't really mean anything literal anymore. Now it's just used as a generic insult, and now he's talking about the consequence of that.
It's the same thing as calling someone an asshole or something now to the right. Like it has
until
no
a
legs
teacher
because-
gets fired, you know. I mean, that's the thing. Like,
well, that's the thing. Once you go outside of this bubble, then that's when it, because the principal or school board has no idea. But in this world, which is the world that you and I deal in, everyone in this bubble knows exactly what's going on here, and none of them take it any more than just like a diss, which is like really completely against what they claim to care about, because now, if there is someone who actually has legit allegations against them, or proof comes out about someone, people are going to wonder, oh, wait a minute, is this person actually a sex offender or a pedophile, or are they just like, they just don't like him, so they're calling him that?
Totally.
Really good point. Really good point. This is why it is important that we shift this cultural framing. You should be discussing these things with your school boards. Like, you should go to a school board meeting and say, like, hey, I just want you to be aware of the fact that far-right extremists frequently refer to people as pedos. And it's very common in modern bigotry. It's actually been common, good Lord, it's actually been common throughout history to call certain minority groups, like homosexuals, child predators. And I want to say this to you here and now so that I know that you know this is a common tactic, and so that you do not take it seriously when a QAnon cultist comes harassing you because one book in our school acknowledges the existence of homosexuals. I want to know that you have the maturity and the understanding to disregard these crazies and to treat them as they deserve to be treated, which is with the least amount of respect you can get away with. With all due respect, which is none. None at all. Do not take them seriously. Do not interfere with my child's education or the education of the children in my community because somebody thinks that Fox is news. It isn't, and I need to hear from you that you understand that. Show up, put the pressure on them. With the centrists in your life, with the people that follow politics only once every 4 years, or only very lightly, or who only get their news from television, let's say, make sure that you are framing what QAnon is and what MAGA is accurately. Make sure whenever they mention these folks in conversations, don't give respect to MAGA viewpoints as though they're serious. How many have we gone over on this show now? There is no factual founding in basically anything that they believe. You need to make that clear to centrists. Just in the way that you talk about these people, in the way that you deal with them. It's not even that you should be treating them like they're a huge deal. It is a huge deal because too many people don't just dismiss them. They take them seriously. Just be clear about who they are. Treat their opinions like they're wind. Is that they are. They need to be viewed by centrists, by people who are rather, they are centrists not because they have a mix of political beliefs, but because by default they just say they're in the middle so people don't bother them about politics. People who don't really follow these things at all. You have to set for them the correct expectations. And you have to provide for them a framework for which they can conduct themselves. Because it's a scary time right now. Everybody's yelling. Everything seems to have dire consequences. So make it clear for them what they have to do. They not only do not have an obligation to fulfill the requests of crazy parents, they have an obligation to deny them. It's no different than when you have one kid in your class whose family belongs to a snake-waving cult who insists on having, I don't know, a poisonous snake in his lunch pail. You can't do that, son. I'm sorry your parents are wacky. You can't do that, because it's a poisonous snake. Even if you think God protects you, I must assume you don't think he protects the rest of this class, but I do, and you can't have the snake here. It's the same thing. I'm sorry, QAnon parent, that you spend your time watching a known bigot on television and less famous bigots on the internet. But what you believe is nonsense, and I'm going to devote no more time to hearing it out. Goodbye. That's how they need to be treated. Just communicate that. Show, don't tell. Ooh. Well, given the fact... Oh, there we go. Aaron Taylor, there we go. Radical centrist, broadening the definition of pornography to suit our purpose of demonizing public schools is disingenuous. Yeah, I would agree. Wicked Foxy Dragon. Why did I just have the Crash Test Dummy song run through my mind? Oh no, now it's in my head. Aaron Taylor, Shade Dragon, I've already said that countless parents have brought forward plenty of examples. Calling people psychopaths actual parents does nothing. No, it's psychopaths. Look, it's Salty Saturday, so I'm not going to work on being productive, although welcome back. I will just say that Aaron Taylor, consider this. Every group of people is literally just people. That means there's good people, that means there's bad people. So, if you're looking for pedophile, I shouldn't even say the word, it'll get me demonetized, pedos in the homosexual community, you'll find them. They're there. They are there at the same or possibly less than rate that they are present in other communities. If you are looking for murderers in the homosexual community, you'll find them. If you're looking for conmen, if you're looking for car salesmen, if you're looking for mechanics, if you're looking for accountants, if you're looking for saints, soldiers, doctors, you'll find them. They're just people. If you are curious to see a little bit more of the world, I have some further reading for you in the form of Reddit. Oh, hell, let's go through this together. Why not? Let's do it. Oh, I'm not even logged in. Yeah, we'll try. Here is Reddit. Not a Drag Queen is the name of the... forum. Let me exit out of that. There we go. Name of the subreddit, I should say. 10 Texas pastors have been charged with sexually abusing children this year. 9 men arrested in underage prostitution sting operation. Not a single drag queen in the group. Almost 1,700 priests and clergy accused of sex abuse are unsupervised. Ex-priest sentenced to 25 years in prison for preying on men in New Orleans. Ontario megachurch says they told police a new allegation against former pastor involves a minor. It's almost always from the church, says one person. Buddy should inhale and puff out his chest more. Okay. Idaho evangelical church member Joshua Ash has been sentenced to up to 8 years in prison for grooming an RAPing a 15-year-old girl he met through his church's faith-based drug and alcohol program. U.S. Christian group accused. We're only up to 2 hours ago, folks. A U.S. Christian group accused of covering up sexual abuse of minors. 63. I mean, it goes on and on and on. 63-year-old soccer coach forgot his phone at a restaurant and had filmed himself drugging, and you saw it. Boys, if you're looking for examples in any group, you will find them. By the way, it does tend to happen at a much more increased rate amongst groups that tend to claim to hold the moral high ground historically. And I think you might want to do some soul searching as to why that is. The church is notorious for not only having these folks in them, in amongst their ranks, but more importantly for covering them up, for protecting the predators. That is what you should be concerned about. Think it over. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. I had a blast hanging out with y'all on this salty Saturday. We will be back Monday, inshallah, God willing. Normal shows at 9 p.m. I hope to see you there. Oh, my name's Jake.